The cat's cries worried someone. They asked for help thinking the cat was hurt. Half right. The cat requested assistance for others. The animal was calling for help after finding an abandoned baby in a garden. When her owners arrived, they found things much more complicated. Cats are surprisingly loyal to their owners and homes. Perhaps this is why one curious cat couldn't leave after hearing a strange noise. Because someone was clearly in distress, Kiki, the cat, had to help. She never considered fleeing and charging toward the crying. Kiki couldn't leave. Instead, she felt compelled to assist. Sam spent most of his life in Oslo, Norway, in a large home with many friends and acquaintances. Not all residents were human. Kiki, a cat, lived in the foyer. People thought Kiki had moved into the house a few years earlier and loved it so much she didn't want to leave. The cat visited Sam most, even though everyone in the neighborhood treated her like their own. Sam noticed Kiki didn't eat one morning. After calling for her for a while, he realized the cat had disappeared or died. He searched for Kiki alone and asked locals if they saw her. She disappeared. The cat returned soon, starting a chain of events that shook the neighborhood. After 3 years, something upset Kiki's daily routine. The neighbors were shocked and upset to hear Kiki crying and meowing at the top of her lungs because she was usually quiet. One resident thought Kiki was hurt and left his apartment to investigate. The first man to hear Kiki ran outside in the garden to find her, followed by another. Kiki's intense meow was also heard by the resident. If you like my videos, don't forget to like or subscribe. Thanks in advance. Sam also heard the piercing noise from his house. He couldn't imagine how he'd feel if Kiki was hurt. Sam followed the other resident outside and found her sitting there making strange noises. They realized something was very wrong. Kiki wasn't alone. They took in the scene and stared at each other for a few seconds. Kiki stared at them from her usual sleeping spot. The newcomer was lying next to a garden tree behind Kiki's bed. The two men gasped at the amazing scene. The cat lay on something as if protecting it. When the men approached Kiki, they saw something terrible. Jaws dropped. What happened? Norway's capital? While debating, the men wondered. Neighborhood residents soon joined in. Everyone was incredulous. They had to act regardless. While one person approached the cat, another called the police. This was unattainable. When an abandoned child needed help, the family cat disproved the stereotype that cats are cold and distant. Cats are just as curious as humans. In fact, often, they can be even more like humans than we could ever imagine. Kiki soon proved that. Next would turn heads. Even Kiki's owners could never have expected her to do something so out of character. One cat's instincts put her in an unexpected place. This cat did something unforgettable after finding a baby in the cold. Baby under cat. Sam was confused and overwhelmed, especially since Kiki was protecting the baby that seemed to have been abandoned there and was clearly distressed. Kiki took in the abandoned baby after hearing it cry. Instead of hissing or scaring him, she looked after the baby like her own and made sure he was okay. She cuddled the baby. Her presence calmed the child, which wasn't crying. Sam and everyone else were astonished by the sight. Sam was overwhelmed and unsure what to do. He didn't realize Kiki had been keeping the baby warm for hours and trying to get attention until he examined the situation. She proved cats were amazing. They had human emotions and could show compassion when needed. Kiki protected the baby from the harsh weather, possibly saving its life. While those around Kiki were incredibly impressed with her and her life-saving act, they were also worried about the child. He okay? Was he there long? Parents? Sam saw the baby was very young and vulnerable. Do something soon. Kiki, the cat, called for help, so the people at the scene had to too. Act now. They called police and paramedics. They wanted to make sure the abandoned child was healthy but knew the authorities would know what to do. Kiki's fierce baby protection surprised everyone. Kiki didn't want the baby away. She loved the baby and tried to protect it. Kiki followed the baby everywhere. Kiki followed paramedics to the ambulance to check the child. She also meowed at the ambulance until she saw the baby herself. The baby was hospitalized. Doctors prioritize baby health. Infants receive the best care. This baby was special. After inspecting it, they found something unexpected. As it left the house, the ambulance lit up the street. To save the baby, it would move quickly. Its condition was unknown. The baby was stable, but they had no idea how malnourished it could be. They prayed they could reach the hospital in time. To reach the hospital on time, the ambulance ran red lights. They stopped outside the hospital. They rushed the baby through its doors to examine it. After seeing the baby, the most unexpected thing happened. It was unforgettable. The pediatric ward specialists examined the baby. They reviewed the standard baby safety check. Before checking vitals, they checked the baby's nutrition. The surprise came later. Sam visited the baby at the hospital. He felt partly responsible because his cat found it in his garden. He drove to the hospital. He thought he'd have trouble seeing them since they didn't know the baby's name. He couldn't believe what he saw there. "Right, Sam." He struggled at reception. They looked worried as he described the infant. Were they afraid he would hurt the child? Just helping. The poor baby was alone. He posted about the child to help. However, who knew who would volunteer? He was vague to avoid creeps at the hospital. He described the baby and its hospital. Wouldn't the mother appear? This child needed parents most. Would they volunteer? Sam was unaware that someone in the hospital was searching for the baby. It wasn't the parents. They weren't human. That's surprising. They'd get the child anyway. The intruder stalked the halls. They wanted to find the child first. They weren't sure why, but the doctors would freak out. They were near the baby. They intuitively knew which room they were in. Who invaded? The doctor leaped out of his skin when the intruder made a noise behind him. Meow. It was Kiki. She sneaked into the ambulance to check the baby. They couldn't believe the cat had found the child by smell. Sam chased his cat. Sam was unaware Kiki was missing. He thought she was in their neighborhood, not the pediatric ward. Cats come and go. He would grab her and tell the doctors. They laughed and told him the baby was fine. Sam was called after learning the baby's condition. Baby's parents. His neighbors had no idea how their baby got into his garden. They called the police hours earlier, worried sick. Sam discovered their true parentage this way. Seeing their child relieved them. They feared losing their child. Sam and Kiki helped the child get everything they needed from the hospital and get discharged. Sam told his friends about the child's safe return home. Something equally amazing was happening elsewhere. Another Russian story proves that cats are smarter and more loyal than we think. Train sirens blared. Cats meowed in the dark. Concerned for the animal, he applied the emergency brake immediately. The cat's hiding place surprised the officer even more. Katie cat heated a baby between rails. Most cats, especially females, can recognize a baby. They protect children from danger. Katie, the train station's furry friend, did this. Katie, the cat, acted when she saw the baby in distress. She never considered fleeing because she couldn't leave the child. This story is amazing because she knew she had to help. Vladivostok, Russia, raised Anton Petrov. He loved the train station. Anton never complained about the hard work. Anton is kind and loved by all. Despite having many friends, he prefers cats. His work schedule prevented him from adopting a cat. That changed soon. Russia has intense, gloomy weather. The country's freezing winters are made worse by the growing number of stray animals. Anton wanted to rescue all the homeless animals. He welcomed Katie at the train station because he loves animals. Katie appeared at Vladivostok station one winter evening in 2012. One of the coldest winters in history. Anton heard noises outside while working. He initially ignored it, but when it continued, he knew he had to investigate. He saw a shivering kitten. He immediately took her inside, which would change his life. The train station adopted Katie that night. Anton loved her the most. He fed, watered, and scratched her back. Anton knew it was cold outside and was happy to give her a warm place to stay. Katie changed Anton's life. Despite being unable to take her home, she was his cat. She smiled at him every day. Katie lived peacefully at the station for 3 years until something terrible happened. On Saturday night, station workers heard a chilling sound. They heard their beloved Katie. Katie's crying and meowing surprised and upset the workers because she kept to herself. One employee jumped up to investigate Katie's injury. Her discovery shivered her. Anton heard his office's piercing sounds and knew something was wrong. He cried at the thought of hurting Katie. Anton followed his co-workers down to Katie's room. He exhaled when he saw her making noises. He discovered she wasn't alone. The two officers stared at the situation. Katie was watching them from a box she usually slept in, but a baby was sleeping behind the rubbish chute. Katie appeared to be protecting the distressed child who appeared to have been abandoned there, and the workers were at a loss. Katie took in the abandoned child after hearing its cries. She cared for the child like her own, not scaring him. It seemed as if her presence soothed the crying baby as he quieted down when she cuddled up next to him. Anton was astonished by the train track scene. Russian TV network RT interviewed Anton after the incident. He was questioned about his first impression when he observed Katie snuggled up next to an abandoned child. He said he was confused and unsure what to do. He didn't realize Katie had been keeping the baby warm for hours while trying to attract attention until he looked closer. Katie's miraculous weather protection may have saved a baby's life. Katie's life-saving skills impressed everyone, but they worried about the baby. What happened? How long was he alone? Parents? Even though the baby was older, he was still at risk. Anton called the paramedics and police without realizing Katie was protective of the child. She didn't want to leave her baby. Katie followed the child everywhere. Katie's motherhood continued. Katie was a smart cat, as everyone saw. She realized the baby needed help. This cat would not rest until she knew he was safe. Station employees said Katie stayed by the road for hours after the child was taken. Katie got the child to the hospital. If it weren't for her keeping him warm, there's no telling what horrors could have unfolded. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again in the next video.